We've got the most pollution in our water on record, in our rivers, lakes and seas. When I was younger, people didn't used to worry about the kids going in the water. Today they worry what they might catch, and I don't mean fish.
The new State of Climate report confirms what we've all been feeling. Britain's seasons are out of sync, spring is arriving earlier, wildlife is struggling to keep up, and we're seeing more rainfall, more floods and more droughts. Rivers are polluted, habitats are degraded, and we're already one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. But our environment is being pushed to its limits. So what is the Secretary of State for the Environment going to do about it? I sat down with Steve Reed to ask the big questions. Are we moving fast enough to restore nature? Can we still save our rivers? And how will the government protect our environment and people in the face of accelerating climate breakdown? Here is our conversation. Hello Steve, thank you for joining me today on what is one of the hottest days of the year so far. I'm going to dive straight in with some questions. The State of the UK Climate Report highlights some alarming finds about the accelerating pace of climate change. How does this make you feel personally, and as a Secretary of State for the Environment, what do you see as the most urgent issues that we must tackle right now to protect our environment and communities?
The report lays bare the dramatic impact that climate change is having on British people here and now. We saw about the escalating rate of deaths from heat that we're seeing in this country, but also other impacts like heavier rainfall at some times of year, leading to 1 in 5 homes in the UK now at risk of flooding. Then at other times in the year, we're seeing drought. We've just had the driest spring for 50 years, and in Yorkshire they've just imposed a hosepipe ban. So we have to take action to protect people from the changes that are happening. So this government has invested the biggest budget on record in upgrading our flood defences, which when we were elected were in the worst condition on record, so we can protect people from the impact of flooding, but also to protect our country during droughts. We've secured over £100 billion of private sector money, part of which will go to building 9 new reservoirs, so when the rain comes down we can capture it and then use it when we get drier periods. There's not been a reservoir built in this country, believe it or not, for 30 years, and so within 10 years, without this government taking action, we would have been looking potentially at water rationing in the way that you get in Mediterranean countries.
But that's in 10 years, so what are you doing now? What action is being taken around that immediately?
That £100 billion that I just mentioned, we've started spending that in April this year, and some of it will go to reducing the huge amount of water that we use from leaking water pipes. You know, people will have seen the holes in the roads, or water flowing down the roads far too frequently. That's because the money wasn't being spent to fix those broken pipes. Now, if we can keep more of that water in the system, then there's less likelihood in the short term of things like hosepipe bans happening. In the long term, we need to get that investment into those reservoirs, and we're speeding up the building of those. It's taken in the past over 10 years to get planning permission for a reservoir. So I, as Secretary of State, have taken the powers myself so that we can get them agreed and get them built far quicker, so that in decades to come we're keeping this country secure when it comes to clean drinking water.
You mentioned flooding. In the 6 months from October 23 to March 24, we experienced the wettest winter on record in England and Wales in 250 years, according to this report. Pollution from agriculture, urban runoff, sewage releases are all contributing to pollution in our rivers and seas. How is the government addressing these pollution challenges to protect water quality in the face of climate breakdown?
We've got the most pollution in our water on record, in our rivers, lakes and seas. When I was younger, people didn't used to worry about the kids going in the water. Today they worry what they might catch, and I don't mean fish. What we're doing is we are investing over £100 billion to upgrade the sewage pipes that were crumbling, so we can stop sewage pouring out of the pipes and into our waterways. That accounts for about half of the pollution. As you were saying, another large part of it, about 45%, comes from agriculture. So we're working with farmers to transition to a more nature-positive way of farming, which means they use less fertiliser and fewer pesticides, so there's not so much to run off into the rivers. Do those two things together, and over the next 5 years we can cut pollution in our waterways in half, and over the following 5 years we can eliminate it. So we have a plan now to clean up our waterways after they were left in the worst condition anyone could ever remember.
How can we be confident these measures are enough?
Well, we've taken action already. As I said, we've got that £100 billion of investment. That's the most money that has ever been spent in one go on upgrading our water system, and that means fixing our sewage pipes. We've announced a bonus ban on the unfair multi-million pound bonuses water company bosses were awarding themselves while doing nothing really to tackle pollution. That focuses their minds. But we're also changing the rules that govern water companies and what they're allowed to put into our water. So in a couple of weeks' time we will have a new report on how we change the regulation. That's the rules that the water companies have to follow, so that the problem that we inherited, the state of our water and what you've just described to me, can never ever happen again once we've cleaned it up.
This report shows that climate change is disrupting seasonal patterns, and that was identified thanks to citizen science contributing to this report. As the founder of Planet Patrol, an organisation that supports citizen science around the world, I've seen how valuable this data is and this approach is firsthand. However, much of the data around water quality and water availability remains limited and fragmented, I think is probably the best way to describe it. With the government's push for greater public engagement in tackling climate issues, how are you supporting grassroots efforts like Planet Patrol to fill these critical data gaps?
Well, I absolutely love the citizen science movement. This is people getting involved and engaged because they care about their environment, and that means caring about our water as well. So we're going to make the system much more transparent. We're going to put monitors on every single outlet so that we can see in real time data on exactly what is going into our water. That helps with transparency. We're also looking at, from the interim report that we saw from the Water Commission, they're looking at moving to a catchment-based model. That means looking at all of the things that are coming into water, in particular river areas, so we can manage that better to help reduce the pollution that's going in there and make sure we can clean it up so it's safer to kids to go and splash about in. It's helping to protect habitats, that's both in the river and alongside the river where this level of pollution is causing immense damage. It also, as it happens, helps support economic growth because the damage to our waterways is damaging tourism. We've got a lot of areas, particularly coastal areas, that rely on tourism, but if people think the water's going to have pollution in it, they're much less likely to go there. So many reasons why this is important, but also why citizen scientists are central to the change that we're going to be bringing about.
And will you be integrating citizen science data into these plans and into policy making and regulatory decisions?
I think we absolutely have to look at how we can do that. As I said before, that's all part of a bigger regulatory reform. We got a report from Sir John Cunliffe in a couple of weeks' time. We'll then consult on that. So the opportunity there, a once in a generation moment to reset our water sector, so the problems that you're seeing when you go and do the testing in your local river can be cleaned up and never ever recur again.
One a little bit closer to home for you, a little bit more light-hearted. What 3 things do you do to reduce your environmental impact?
What 3 things do I do to reduce my environmental impact? Well, we just had an extension built at home, and I used recycled bricks rather than it was from an old demolished factory. I'm careful about how I use water at home. You know, I've got a water butt and I try and use that to water the garden, and I try and eat food from sustainable sources. I check the labels and read them to see that I am not causing damage that I can avoid causing.
Great, thank you. And my final question, this report shows how the climate crisis is affecting ecosystems and beautiful habitats like this. The UK is one of the most nature depleted countries in the entire world. If you could inspire one big environmental change in the UK tomorrow to make the biggest difference, what would that be?
Well, we're working with about 80% of our land is being farmed, it's in food production. And with that much land in food production, we can make a big change there. So I'm working with farmers who are leading the journey towards a more nature positive model of farming. That means that you use less fertiliser, fewer pesticides. We've already banned bee-killing pesticides, so we're not destroying the pollinators. But if more farmers farm in that way, and we've got the budgets there to help them to transition, we can make a massive impact on restoring nature. That's good for biodiversity, but it's also good for tackling the climate. So, you know, landscapes like the one here behind us, this wetland, is not only beautiful, and you see the insects and the pollinators here, but it also captures and stores carbon, so it's protecting the climate from all of the damaging impacts that we see from the report that's out today.
Amazing, thank you for your time.